Messe 2012, brought to you by Groove 3.
Hey, it's Russ from Messe 2012. I'm with Niklas from Softube. Nice to see you. Having a good show?
Absolutely. First day, it's going good.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. Recently I got hold of a copy of this bundle, this studio collection, and I have to say, there's some really cool stuff on there, like SAR. Tell me about SAR first. That reverb unit, I had not really heard about it much before, and now I'm just blown away by it. And it's not convolution. Everybody talks about convolution all the time. What's the thinking behind SAR, and why is it so bloody good?
We could start with convolution. I always had a problem with convolution because sometimes it doesn't really match the recorded material, and you start to tweak and find other impulse and stuff like that. And then you have those great reverbs of the past, like the 224 or 480, and you have the great reverbs of today, like the M7, which have these lush sound that seems to really blend with the original signal really good, so that you apply the reverb, and after a while you really don't hear it, but you feel it. So we basically wanted to make a lush, nice reverb with a classy tail and a modern vibe. That's, the bullet points that we started with. And then it was just go about designing a reverb, an algorithmic reverb, so that you can have full control over the tail and how it starts and everything. And just try to make it as good as possible. And another important thing, with as few parameters as possible, so that a user, you sit with it for 5 or 15 minutes, and then you should be able to tell exactly what every knob, every fader does immediately. So that when you bring it up and want it a little bit more of that, you can just change it. And that's important for us now, sound and user interface.
Yeah, because it's like 5 sliders basically, isn't it? And you start moving those sliders, and even if you don't know what you're doing, you're suddenly getting some results that sound really respectable. Just for those that are uninitiated, we're talking about convolution, we're talking about algorithmic here. Can you, in a kind of nutshell, explain the difference? Algorithmic is how they all used to be made, isn't it? And now a lot of convolutions are about there. Can you in a couple of sentences explain to the guys who just get into reverb what the difference is?
You could say that a convolution reverb is like a sampling. Say if you compare it to sound, then it's like sampled sound, which can sound exactly like the original, but it's hard to tweak. You could do some stuff, filter it, and so. While a convolution reverb is like a synthesized sound. So you have a sampler playback and a real synthesizer. That's the essential difference between a convolution being the sampled one and the algorithmic being the synthesized one, where you, with equations, actually build up the reverb from scratch and don't take a copy of something like a room or church.
Right. So let's move broader now. I've also been playing with a TLA tube, and we're seeing it on the screen there, the tube leveling amp. What was the thinking behind that? Again, you guys, I think we had this conversation, it's not been on the podcast yet, but you're kind of enthusiasts, aren't you? You think, I love that bit of gear, now let's make it. Talk to me about tube leveling amplifier and why you did that, and what people should expect from it.
First of all, it's we worked together with Summit Audio to do it, and the TLA 100, it's a compressor, tube leveling amplifier, whatever you want to call it. It's their flagship product, the product that made the Summit Audio famous. And it's a great, we always loved the sound of it and wanted to do it. So we've been nagging Summit Audio about it for many years actually. And then while doing the plugin, we wanted to add something to it that still has the same character as the Summit Audio, the original one, but you add a little bit of usability. And a really simple feature that we had was a low cut. Since a lot of people use the TLA 100 for bass and vocals, it's pretty good to have a low cut on it, so that you can just filter out those rumbling mic stand stuff from the vocals immediately. And we wanted to add parallel compression because that's a feature that people use a lot today. And having the TLA 100 as a plugin then you can have it as a stereo plugin, then you can have it as a stereo compressor, then you can use it for a drum bus, and suddenly parallel compression makes sense. So that's, features we added to make it more modern, more useful. But then we had the TLA 100 has a character in its output distortion, which we realized that some people use the output distortion to tame the transients. Some other people don't, because they are mixing at completely different levels. What we wanted to do was, first we just included the output distortion, so when you gain it up, you get output distortion. But that wasn't very useful, because then you had plus 40 dB in your mix bus, and that's, so instead of doing it like the gain control as it was on the original TLA, we just made a saturation control, which is basically a gain control with a fader ride behind it, so that turn up the gain, but the level stays the same. And suddenly you get a lot more tonal characteristics out of the same compressor, but just altering the output distortion. So that's a bit on how we think when we go about to do plugins like this.
Obviously, we're a Pro Tools site, and one of the big conversations right now in the Pro Tools community is AAX. What are you guys up to with the AAX?
All done. We released everything on day one at AES. So all our plugins are AAX native, and all plugins except the SAR Reverb are AAX DSP. The good thing, the upgrade doesn't cost anything. If you buy a native license, you get the AAX DSP license as well. So it's, for us it was a no-brainer to get on board AAX, and for a customer it should be a no-brainer to get on board. That's why I put it at the same price as everything else.
Now, I was talking to Dave Hill earlier today. He was talking about the noise floor is better in the AAX platform, giving him about 10 dB extra on the noise floor, which is fantastic. Are there things that are going to be coming up with you guys that take advantage of the new AAX architecture?
I assume that he compared it to the TDM architecture, and yes, there are things that you can do in the TDM architecture that you cannot do in other architectures, and vice versa. But yeah, generally everything's better. So, but it's the same hand. What happens if an architecture isn't good enough is that you try to work around it and you really design your product so that the customer shouldn't tell any difference, So if it were the case that we had TDM products that sounded different than our test versions, we would never have released them, because they should sound the same. So no, you don't expect any sonically different plugins, because we really work hard to make them sound exactly the same as you expect, so that you can bring up your old project and you get the same sound.
Thanks for your time. It's always a pleasure. Have a great show, and look forward to seeing what comes out of your software house in the coming months and years.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Take care.